Okay, Chair, we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Mark. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Southern Rural Committee that is being conducted with members and officers at various locations, communicating via audio, video, and online. Before the meeting starts, I'd firstly like to welcome our new committee clerk, William Edwards, to the meeting, and now invite him to go ahead and explain how the proceedings will work and to confirm that members and officers are in attendance. So over to you, William.
Thank you, Chair. I will begin with a roll call. So if members could please indicate their attendance by speaking to confirm that I can hear and see everybody. We have apologies from David Barnard, I believe. Councillor John Bishop.
Here.
George Davies.
Here.
Steve Deacon Davies.
Yep, I'm here.
Ian Moody.
I'm here too.
Apologies from Lisa Nash. Sam North.
I'm here.
Claire Strong.
I'm here.
And Terry Tyler.
Present.
Thank you very much. This meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel. If the live stream fails, the meeting will adjourn. If the live stream cannot be restored within a reasonable period, then the remaining business will be considered at a later date. If, for any reason, the meeting is not quorate, an officer will notify attendees by interjecting the meeting. The meeting will adjourn immediately. Once the meeting is quorate, the meeting will resume. If connection cannot be restored within a reasonable period, then the remaining business will be considered at a later date. Only members present for the entire debate and consideration of an item are entitled to vote. If technology fails for a member during the debate and rejoins the meeting, they will not be able to vote on that item. If a member drops out of the meeting and is unable to connect, an email has been sent to each of you with telephone options. Please ensure that there is no noise interference from any other sound emitting devices nearby, and please remain muted when you are not speaking. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the raise hand button to alert the host that you wish to speak. The host will inform the chair of the names of the speakers, and you should wait to be invited by the chair to address the committee. Voting will be via the usual procedure with the green tick for yes, red cross for no, and the blue raise hand to abstain. To enable votes to be counted, please do not clear your vote until requested to do so. Please do not vote until it has been confirmed that all of the raised hands have been cleared. Details of how members voted will not be kept or minuted unless a recorded vote was requested or an individual requests that their vote be recorded, and it will not be heard or seen on the audio and YouTube recordings of the meeting. The committee member and scrutiny officer will clearly state the result of the vote, and the chair will proceed to the next agenda item. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions about this procedure before we start? Thank you, and over to you, Claire.
Thank you, William. So from our agenda tonight, item 1, I have apologies for absence, and those have been received from Councillor Barnard, Councillor Frost, and Councillor Nash. Notification of other business for tonight, I have none. Item 5, Chairman's announcements. I'd like to welcome to our meeting tonight Tom Brindley, who will be a public speaker under item 5. And I'd also like to announce, in accordance with the Council's policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed, and the audio recordings will be available to view on the mod.gov and a full recording via the NHDC's YouTube channel. Members are also reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the announcement of the agenda item, please. So I'm going straight into item 6, which is public participation. As I said, we have Tom Brindley from Kingswalden Parish Council. So Tom, if you'd like to address the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to address this committee. I'm Tom Brindley, and I'm speaking to you as the clerk to Kingswalden Parish Council. Kingswalden Parish Council incorporates Breachwood Green, which lies east-northeast from Luton Airport and is directly in the flight path for both landing and takeoff. The council is not anti-airport, but does believe the airport should be held to account and should adhere to the regulations imposed by the planning and environmental regulators. As part of this, the council monitors the impact from the airport, including traffic, noise and light pollution. In the past, we've borrowed equipment supplied by the airport, This is only available for a few weeks at a time and cannot be ordered to suit, just when the airport make it available. Now, the council feels it is necessary to gather all year round independent data on aircraft movements and noise. So the council resolved to purchase its own professional grade noise monitoring equipment and has sought funding from various sources. Herts County Council has contributed. We also approached the airport, but their funding stream has been suspended this year. The council will provide the bulk of funding from reserves. Now, I believe that the data collected by this equipment will be of benefit to many organisations, including North Herts District Council, for example, in environment and planning matters, but also to neighbouring parish councils. The equipment will be fixed, but also mobile. That is, it will normally be located at the recreation ground at Breachwood Green, but can be operated at any location. It's built-in GPS, and we will purchase the tripod mount. So we're asking for £1,500 towards the initial 9,500 capital funding. The total project will be higher because of ongoing annual calibration. And they'll also, if we receive the funding from the committee, that would give us the opportunity to purchase enhanced software, which would be able to link any noise to an individual aircraft. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tom. So do members have any questions if they'd like to raise their hands? So Councillor Sam North.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just one quick question, which is why do you feel that the monitoring that is conducted by Luton Airport is insufficient in terms of the data that they collect and the information that they have, and what do you propose to do with any of the data that you receive as a part of your monitoring?
The data collected by the airport is, I believe, their noise monitoring is at Frogmore, which is considerably further. An aircraft at that point are considerably higher. That's the point at which they turn after takeoff and move on to their destination. So it doesn't actually give any monitoring the noisiest part, it's noisiest settlement closest to the airport, which is Breachwood Green. So we think that is important to get that data. It's also independent, and I'm not suggesting that the airport's data isn't, but I don't know all the details of their data. We only have what they provide us with, whereas with the independent data, we can make our own conclusions to it and share those with other bodies.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor North?
It does, Chair. Just to come back very briefly, within the report, the officer has advised us that it doesn't sort of monitoring through what you are suggesting doesn't provide any benefit to the council or to dealing with the issues. How would you respond to that claim?
I wasn't aware of that actually, but if the council, if when you say the council, if you're talking about the district council, or you're talking about the parish council.
The report that we've received says that the, let me just get to the right point. It says the opinion of the officer was that the proposal to install a sound level monitor at Breachwood Green would not be of benefit to the council, the airport, or others in a meaningful and useful manner. It doesn't say which council, but I can assume that it would mean the district council.
Well, I don't know how that conclusion was formed, and if the district council chose not to make use of that data, then that is your choice. But my understanding, I have been approached by other councils, parish councils, who are very keen for this monitoring equipment, as are other bodies, independent bodies, which work to monitor the airport. And the parish council itself believes that this will be of value. So I really can't comment on that. It's the first time I've heard of it.
I've also got a question from Councillor Terry Tyler. So, Councillor Tyler.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose a little bit. I'm actually sympathetic in support of any measurement of pollution, whether it be noise or air. I think I'm just thinking, I think it's a little bit of a point of order, really. As far as I was concerned, that any precept council would not receive any grants from us. Is that changed?
Yes.
Right. Okay, good. In that case, that's all I need to know.
Okay. Thank you for that. Does anybody else have any other questions for Tom Brindley? If not, I don't see any more hands. So thank you very much for your presentation, Tom. You are very welcome to stay and listen to the rest of our meeting. And I'm sure that you will be interested probably to listen to the report that we're going to have from Claire Morgan, the Community Development Officer. But after that, if you don't wish to stay, we won't be offended if you want to leave the meeting. I was just going to add, the normal protocol is that speakers, when they've come, and members of the public, actually after they've made their presentations, they do switch their cameras off. So if
I shall do that.
If you could do that, would be lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now moving on, what takes us to item 6 on our agenda, which is, sorry, so item 7 on our agenda, which is the grants and our community update. So it's over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. The only grant we have to consider this evening is the one from Kings Walden Parish Council. I do want to add that I'm not an expert in sound monitoring equipment, and I consulted with our environmental health officers who deal with sound, and the opinions in the report are their opinions. They felt that they didn't really see a purpose in having noise monitoring equipment because you would need specialist knowledge to extrapolate the information that came out of it. So it's up to members whether you think that this is going to be useful for the parish council to be able to use this equipment, and if the information they gain from it is going to be able to be evidence that they can provide to other authorities and the airport if they find that the noise is too intrusive or more intrusive than the airport are saying it is. So that is why it's in the report. I'm just giving you sort of both sides so that you can make a balanced opinion. There's enough money in the budget to pay for the grant. I'll just go quick through. If you look on page 12, you can see under item 10 in my report that we currently have 8,899 available to spend. So if you allocate 1,500 for the noise equipment to Kings Walden Parish Council, it will leave you with 7,399. And I'm happy to take any questions on anything else in the report.
Okay, thank you, Claire. As I am the ward member under which Kings Walden Parish Council comes under, for those that do know Breachwood Green and know the village hall there, will know that if you are in that village hall and it's a warm summer's day and you've got the windows open, you have to stop the meetings or stop what you're doing while aircrafts, particularly some of the aircraft coming in, go overhead because it is very loud. It has been something I know from going to the parish council meetings for a number of years that they do get into some conversations and dialogue with the airport about the noise. And their view has always been that the noise monitoring equipment isn't where it should be, which is actually within the centre of the village, so it could clearly measure what the impact is. And I think this is what they are trying to do, to address that. And particularly as we know, continually hearing about the expansion to the airport, I think that the sooner they can start getting their own accurate noise monitoring data, they can build up a picture and really can get into dialogue with the airport about the noise levels that the village is under. I mean, there have been circumstances when the airport does give grants to some of the properties around for them to put in measures to make the aircraft get it out through my teeth, the aircraft noise lesser. So some houses have received grants to put in additional glazing on their properties, but it is, the the location of the village is such that it is, noise is a very difficult issue from them. So does anybody have any? Yes, Councillor Sam North.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a brief question to Claire Morgan, and that is, do we know, we might not know, but do we know how many complaints have been received in the last however long of noise nuisance relating to Luton Airport in the Kings Warden area?
No, I don't have any record of that.
Any other questions? I don't see any other raised hands. So if I can take you to page 5 then, where we have the recommendations for this committee tonight. And 2.1, we are asked that we consider the provision of grant funding for the organisation below. And then in 2.1.1, there is a grant recommendation of 1,500 to Kings Walden Parish Council towards the cost of to purchase and install sound monitoring equipment, as was outlined in the report and as we heard from Tom Brindley. Would anybody like to move that? Or shall I move it? I'll move it from the chair. Would you like to second that, Terry? Is that your hand going up? Okay, so I've moved it from the chair and seconded by...
Sorry, I think you have to hear me second it. So I'll just...
Yeah, I do think I need to hear you second it.
I second it.
Thank you for taking your mic off to do that. In that case, are we ready to go to a vote on this? Do we do it?
Yes, thank you. If you would like to vote in the usual manner.
Ask people to vote, please. You all voted?
We have, and the vote is carried.
Okay, thank you very much, William. Thank you, councillors. And the last recommendation we had from the report was in 2.2, just that we endorse the actions taken by the community officer to promote the greater community capacity and wellbeing of Southern Rural. So did anybody else have any other further questions on her report to us? If not, I will assume that you all read and digested. Okay, that means we can move on then, and moving on, it takes us to item 8, which is the annual update on the Section 106 obligations for the Southern Rural Committee. And I'm delighted to welcome Simon Ellis to present this item to us. It's an annual event, always look forward to it. And I have forgiven for the fact that he's used the word Royston in the report.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for using the word Royston in the report twice. I just got a few things to highlight there in the report. In July, Cabinet, it was agreed to adopt a new planning obligations supplementary planning document to replace the 2006 document that we're all so familiar with, the one that we've been using all these years. But that document won't actually come into full effect until the overarching local plan is actually adopted. But at least members of the Cabinet have seen it, and we know which direction we're going in. And at the moment, it's looking at a Section 106 process rather than looking at a community infrastructure-led levy process. Having said that, December Cabinet will be looking at a report to decide whether or not it's worth pursuing a small site SIL, so a locally set community infrastructure levy. Community infrastructure levy being a sort of tariff which you just apply as a sort of mathematical formula rather than a sort of negotiation process. It's supposed to be more straightforward. The other thing that's going to happen in December is we have to publish an infrastructure funding statement, and myself and Stephanie Blunt, my Section 106 monitoring officer, are working on that at the moment. What we're doing there is we're just doing an annual record of all the Section 106 activity in the district, all the money received, all the negotiations that have taken place, all the money that we hold for all the various categories. So it will be a central piece of information that we'll publish every year, and we'll backdate it to the previous financial year. So we'll have a central record of everything. But I know that the point of the area committees is that you get a bit more area focused information. And the exec members, Ian Mantle and Paul Clark, have asked me to carry on doing these area committee updates as well as the annual infrastructure funding statement, which will go on the website because it's more useful information for the area committees. But the good thing is that the format of information that we've been holding over all these years, we've been carefully monitoring in our database, is exactly the same format that the government wanted. So we were doing that already. So it's been quite easy for us to fill in the forms to do the infrastructure funding statement. But that will appear on our website in December 2020, and we're nearly finished all that information. So the other thing I was going to mention is, I was talking about SIL earlier, the white paper on the planning reforms. I don't know whether members are familiar with some of the stuff that's in there. Obviously, there's a lot in there, but it's at quite a high level. One of the key things that might affect Section 106 is that the government is suggesting that they want to introduce a national SIL. So it'll be a national infrastructure levy. It won't be locally set, and it will be the same across the country. That's the idea. Now, the role of district councils in that is not clear, but I would assume that if that is carried through in legislation, what will happen is there'll be a national SIL and we'll be responsible for collecting it and spending it. So it should make life easier because it will mean that you don't do lots of local inquiries to create your own level, and then you get different levels in different districts, and you get developers picking one area off against the other. So in theory, that if there is a national SIL, it will make things more straightforward, and you won't have lots of negotiating to do as well. So that's in the white paper, but I think that's some way off in terms of actual legislation and regulation. So at the moment, all we can do as a council is pursue ideas that we can under current legislation, rather than sort of stop doing everything now and then waiting to see what comes out of the white paper. But that's just a direction of travel that I thought I'd mention to you. And then finally, under paragraph 8.45, that's where I'm listing all the funds that are still available in all the villages. And just highlighting a couple of the villages there, Ickleford to start with. And there's a lot of funds in Ickleford because that's relating to the old Ramrick Manor development, or what we called LS1. And also Purton, which is the Carla Holmes and the Gladmans scheme that was permitted a few years ago. And it's no coincidence that those two villages have the most funds, because they're the villages that are not currently in the Greenbelt. So that's where certain developments have been allowed recently, of quite large scale developments. So the other villages that are currently in the Greenbelt, that's why the pots of money there are so small, because we don't allow any houses in the Greenbelt, which is the usual issue with the villages of this size. You only get small developments here and there, so you get small pots of money around that you sometimes struggle to fund. So that's all the updates for me, but I'll take any further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Does anybody have any questions? Please raise their hand. And I have Councillor Sam North.
Thanks, Chair. 8.4.2 within the report is a table relating to Section 106 provisions surrounding Ickleford and Lower Stondon. That covers a number of the pots of money that went to different places because of the LS1 development. Are you able just to expand on any other Section 106 money that was given because of the LS1 development at all?
Yeah, actually, I should have mentioned that comment, because the chair asked me that before the meeting. Is the one thing I don't list distributions, because I'm not responsible for monitoring.
Simon, you are breaking up a bit, unless it's me.
Responsible for spending them, but as some.
Do apologise, Simon.
As well, it says my internet's not. Is that better? So as members will know, and as Councillor North will know, there was significant sums of money that went to Hertfordshire County Council that are going to be spent by Central Bedfordshire County, because it's relating to primary schools and that's in the millions. So that's gone. Have I gone?
No, Simon, your camera's gone.
Okay.
But that's fine. If your camera goes and you speak, we should perhaps be able to hear you. But I don't know if
Co-host has stopped your video, is it?
I don't know if you got the gist of that.
Just saying,
Cam.
it's the county council figures that I'm not listening. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I got most of that. I think what I just wanted to highlight is my real concern following the last full council meeting, where councillors decided that the local plan in its current form is okay, that developments on the boundary of our district seem to donate huge amounts of money to neighbouring authorities, not allowing our own authority to develop infrastructure where it's needed. And with East of Luton sites now approved by many councillors, Great Ashby being so close to Stevenage Borough Council, and with that huge amount of development around there, I'm just incredibly concerned at the level of money that we're not going to see, based on the location of a lot of these sites, with thanks obviously to Councillor Moody Tyler for voting for the motion that we put to full council. But it does really concern me, and I'd just like, if the officer is back, reassurances that we would see a higher percentage of the money than what we have done at LS1, whether that is or could be the case.
Can you still hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good, okay. Yeah, I will respond to that. I mean, I think if you look at the local plan sites, LS1 was the only one which had any specific reference to direct contributions from North Hertfordshire developments into central Bedfordshire by simple fact of geography, because the nearest primary school is in Lower Snondon. And that's where the educational authorities combined and decided that that was where it was best spent. I mean, planning is the infrastructure is not always going to be, particularly on the boundaries, is not always going to be best spent in North Hertfordshire. If you were going to have a development in Great Ashby, for example, it may be that some money would need to be spent in Stevenage, because people who live in that development may well use services in Stevenage. So that's not going to be an issue that is always a matter of, because the development's in North Hertfordshire, all the money must come to North Hertfordshire District Council, because it's natural that if those developments are nearer bigger settlements outside the district, it's natural that the people who live there are going to use services in other districts. And that's the point about planning and infrastructure, is you can't just draw an administrative boundary around it and say there shall be no money spent over the boundary, because people who live in those developments aren't going to say, oh, I'm not going to go and use a leisure centre in Stevenage because it's in Stevenage, I'll go and use a leisure centre in North Hertfordshire. It doesn't quite work like that. But in terms of specifics, the only one that's listed in the local plan is LS1. You did mention East of Luton. For example, East of Luton, there will be, if that ever goes ahead, there will be some money spent on highway infrastructure improvements in Luton from that development. And that would be natural, because people who would live in that development would travel in and out of Luton and will have a strain on the highway network. So I take the point, but you can't see planning as it's an island and the money must stay in the island, because no one who lives in those developments are never going to go and use services in the towns around the edges of the district. So, because planning spatial, it's not wholly administrative.
Simon, just on the comments you made, and again, it was a bit wobbly when you were talking about the education, which obviously isn't a pot of money that you hold. But my understanding, and when that planning application came in the negotiations of the 106, that it was agreed between Herts County Council and Bedfordshire County Council that the junior schooling would be a provision from Bedfordshire, but senior schooling was going to be a provision from Hertfordshire. Was that correct?
I don't know that for certain. If you'd like me to check the exact figures, I can update the committee next week. Would that be better? I don't know the exact differentiation of the funding, because I don't have it listed and don't monitor it. But if members would like me to, I can feed back next week and give you the exact breakdown of the funding and where it's gone and to which schools it's been allocated to. Would that be helpful? Would that be helpful for you, Councillor North, since you had that?
I mean, it would be. I think I would just like to come back and say there are huge amounts of development in our area and we're not going to be seeing the improvement in infrastructure that we need to deal with that increase in infrastructure. We're already seeing infrastructure issues, and it really does concern me at the percentage of finances that went over the border with LS1 and with the already significant issues of infrastructure within the Ickleford and Holwell region. But more than happy to receive a report.
If you could do that for us, Simon.
Certainly will do, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So next on the list for questions, I have Councillor Terry Tyler. So, Terry. You need to unmute yourself.
My mouse got stuck for some reason. Thank you, Chair. Simon, I've noticed in 8.4.5 we have Great Ashby, which obviously is in George's and I award, a pavilion fund and also a community centre fund. Are these monies still to be spent? Because I wasn't aware of these monies, which I've got. Pavilion fund this is on page 23, 11,084 and 39 pence. Community centre fund, 17,371 and 99 pence.
Yeah, Councillor Tyler, those are pots of money that are left from a much bigger pot that has already been spent. If you remember, that goes way back to a development which was known as North East Stevenage 2 or NES 2, which was the development we all know about in our district that we're hopefully going to learn from in the future in terms of density and car parking and that kind of thing. So yeah, some of that money that's left is just, there were much bigger funds that have been spent, but this is what happens with Section 106 pots. You spend it on a project, the project may cost a certain amount, but what you had in the bank was more than that. So you end up with these small funds. But yeah, if you speak to the Great Ashby Community Council, is that the right phrase? Then you can mention to them that there are still some funds left that we can draw upon for certain projects.
I wasn't aware that we could do. I did understand that there were bigger pots. I looked at the table where the money was coming in. One of the big reasons why I'm asking this is because there's quite a movement towards some work on the district park, particularly I call it an eco centre, but maybe it's pavilion, and the moving of the car park and the entrance to off Great Ashby Way. And so these funds could be used for that sort of thing, and I wasn't aware of them, so it's great to be aware of those. And Great Ashby Community Council can draw upon that, can they? Or do they come to this committee and ask for it, money? How do they do it?
They need to speak to Stephanie Blunt, Section 106 Monitoring Officer, and myself, and then we'll look at the project and then see what we can allocate. So if they've got they'll need to have a specific project in mind, which needs to be, have a program of works. They can't just say we've got a wish list and here's, it's more about a project's in the pipeline, and then approach us to look at the funding, and then we can decide whether or not it meets the criteria that we can then bring to the. But they're perfectly available to come and speak to us. Not a problem at all, Terry.
That's great. I think it's really pretty exciting to see that those monies are still available, because I thought that the last of the S106 monies was spent on our Great Ashby Woodland Walks a couple of years ago. There is another question though. I think you answered it in a question to Councillor North, is about proximity. Now I know we've had a few discussions about GA1 Roundwood. If it's ever built, that I believe there are something like £55,000 that would be available to the Great Ashby Community Centre for allotments. I was just wondering if we could just verify that or give us an update on that figure, because some of the fellow councillors in Great Ashby Community Council believe that proximity doesn't actually apply, and because it's in Gravely Parish that they would get the money, and I believe that proximity does apply, as I think you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think it's natural that the point of Section 106 money is to mitigate the impact of development on infrastructure. So the nearest infrastructure is inevitably going to take the biggest hit from a development in that locality. That's what I was talking about in terms of the borders. But as you know, Councillor Tyler, you and I have had quite a few conversations over the years about Roundwood and the potential for walkway funding and things like that. And there's also that fund that we looked at that deals with highway safety between Gravely and Roundwood, if Roundwood to go ahead. Do you remember we'd had that monitoring fund that's potentially in the pipeline? But what you're talking about there is a Section 106 agreement that is under negotiation, because that planning application hasn't been determined yet, because it remains in the Greenbelt, as you know. And until the local plan sort of moves a bit further forward and we can have more confidence that the inspector who's examining the local plan is going to agree to the release of those sites, then most Greenbelt sites are sort of stuck in the waiting room, aren't they, to get permission. That's why I was mentioning earlier that it's no coincidence that the main funds we have available are in Ickleford and Purton, because they're the only two settlements that I'm listing here that aren't currently in the Greenbelt. You know, as you know from your understanding of the local plan, the vast majority of our growth for the future is currently in Greenbelt, and that's the only sites that we're proposing to allocate. So until we move further forward with the local plan, we can't really progress many of the associated planning applications. But having said that, what I'll be doing, Councillor Tyler, is as that planning application progresses, the Roundwood application, we'll be putting more information on the website about what's happening with the 106 as it moves towards getting a decision. And I'll certainly be updating you and the Community Council in the future, as I have done in the past, when we get a bit more certainty about what funds would be available from the developer in relation to that planning application.
Oh, okay, and just and that's great, and thanks for mentioning the Westwood extension of the Great Woodland Walk, which I'd slipped my mind for a second, but that was another discussion, wasn't it? So I got the impression though that, and I think I got an email from you saying that maybe it's tentative. Is that if Roundwood goes ahead, then the money for particularly for allotments of around 50,000. Would be allocated to Great Ashby Community Council and not go to Gravely.
That's right. The current draft of the legal agreement includes, I think it's a sum of around 30,000, 36,000, which index linked. So it will be around 50,000, but it would go to Great Ashby Community Centre to provide allotment facilities for the development.
Community Council or centre? Sorry, they're two different things.
Sorry?
Do you mean Community Council or Community Centre?
Community Council, yeah. Sorry, the Community Council, yeah.
Yeah, because there is a Community Centre group as well.
No, I meant the Community Council, which is the equivalent of a parish council in Great Ashby, isn't it?
That's the one. That's the one that goes around. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Simon, for the patience on that. And that's great.
No problem.
Anybody else have any questions for Simon? Hands up. In which case, I do have a little something I wanted to ask about the recommendations that we have come in on your report, Simon. And that's on recommendation 2.3. And that's where you are saying that if any, that the area committee or ward council be consulted prior to funding being allocated away from the area. And I just wanted to dwell and ask, what do you exactly mean by that?
That means that I only have delegated powers to authorise funding for, without further consultation, for development that is funding that's allocated within a parish, which has been raised from development within that parish. So as long as, and this has been the same recommendation that's been forwarded for years and years that Mary Caldwell dealt with all those years ago, which is basically myself, I can allocate funding from the Section 106 pots for the locality within which that funding's been raised. If it's for a different village, I think you may remember, Councillor Strong, there was many years ago, there was ideas to have funding from the villages to go to Hitchin Swim Centre.
It did go to Hitchin Swim Centre. But
it had to come through member consultation before that decision was made.
As I remember, it didn't, because a lot of us felt that our money had been stolen.
Well, that may be the case, Councillor Strong, why the recommendation is now worded in the way that it's worded, so that we avoid that scenario in the future.
Yes, because the scenario was that to do the upgrades to the Hitchin Swimming Centre, a lot of Section 106 monies from villages was taken away from the villages and used for that purpose. And we was not happy, but that's quite a long time ago. So if it is now that no money can be reallocated to another area without this committee or ward members knowing about it, then that does make me a little bit more happy about it. However, you also go on about the fact that the funds are going to be diminishing because of the way we are and the way current legislation is going. But I would like to say that I and I hope the rest of the committee would support me in that I am very supportive of the cabinet report that's going in December, where they're going to look at whether they're going to introduce sort of mini sills for small developments, because we seem to get in the villages lots of little small developments, and if you had a little bit of a contribution from all of those, it would actually give our parish councils a better sum of money to be able to spend on facilities in the villages, which we don't have at the moment. So does the rest of the committee support having mini sill? Because if so, I'd quite like to put it into the recommendation so that we could feed that back to cabinet, that we welcome or we would welcome that being introduced to the council. Any comment? Councillor Sam North again.
Yeah, I'm happy to support certain aspects of reports that do go to cabinet. The only thing that I would ask before we agree to mini sill, if we could just get a clarification as to what we mean by that. And I think that there are still questions to be raised about how that money would be raised for smaller developments. I'd just like to get a bit of clarification as to exactly what we mean and what the wording of the recommendation would be.
Okay,
Diamond, can you answer that?
I can advise, yeah. I mean, what officers are currently looking at is, and as is set out in the report, over the years, years and years ago, we used to be able to raise money from one house, two houses, three houses, and we had a tariff system, and we ended up generating a lot of money. And I think what the point that Councillor Strong was making is the cumulative impact of those developments was captured through the tariff. But what's happened is the government, in wanting to encourage local planning authorities to adopt a community infrastructure levy, they have put in a regulation that says you can't raise funds from Section 106 agreements until you reach a threshold of 10 dwellings. So what that means is if you get lots of small developments in the villages of less than 10 dwellings, they currently don't contribute anything to the infrastructure pot. So the idea with a small sites community infrastructure levy is that you levy it on developments up to 10, and then you then get a cumulative effect. So over the years, you get these small developments in the infill plots and all over the little villages. You can collect some money and then have a little bit of a pot to play with years down the line. So that's the idea. And what's happening is officers are looking into the feasibility of that. They've got to look at the, is it going to be worth our while being the tax collector, and how much money would we conceivably get over the long term? And then look at the benefits, which are the clear benefits that Councillor Strong has outlined, which is that you would then capture the cumulative effect of all those small developments in the future, and they would all be contributing rather than, because I don't know whether you notice, quite often you get a lot of planning applications for 9 houses, and that's no mistake, because they want to come in below the 10 house threshold and avoid any Section 106 funding. So the small site sill would stop that sort of perverse incentive to try and do small developments of 9 rather than bigger developments where you do more money. So yeah, that's the idea. So yeah, if you wanted to add in a line in the recommendation to say that particularly for the southern rural area, because it would affect this area more because of this, you get a lot more smaller developments in the villages in the southern rural area than you do in the bigger towns. Then yeah, we can project that forward, and if you put that recommendation in, something along the lines of the committee would endorse any ideas towards the delivery of a small site sill in the cabinet meeting in December. Can certainly add that in.
I think you said it perfectly. I just need the rest of the committee to endorse that. And I know from a lot of the small villages, particularly in my, the ward that I represent, that it was always useful because suddenly they realised they'd got a couple of thousand here or a couple of thousand there, and it goes a long way in the small villages. So I think to have something back, that certainly would be good, because we see an awful lot of infill or knock one down, build two back going on. So it would add back more money back to our community. Now I've got on my list, I've got Councillor John Bishop. So John, over to you.
Yeah, I support SIL, but even, and always have done, even not just on small developments, I'd like to see it across the board.
Well, I think that will come in with the new legislation. At the moment, we're going to stick with the section 106.
We could do it now if we wanted to, on all developments.
I think that's up to the administration if they wanted to change it.
That's another debate.
It is. So next to speak, I've got Councillor Terry Tyler.
Thank you, Chair. I'm given that Simon's just given us a good explanation of what SIL is, because I was a bit vague about it. We're talking about encouraging SIL for southern rural because of our villages. And George and I represent Wymerley and Gravelly, which are small villages as well as Todd's Green and various others, even smaller, Titmore Green and Lower. There's all sorts of little places in our ward. So I'd fully support this. That's what I'm going to say.
Thank you, Terry. And Councillor Ian Moody.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with all the other members. Villages are getting hit with these small developments. I'm on my third development I'm calling in this week. And that again is 9 houses, which is just sitting under the development. So I'm more than happy to move this motion if somebody would like to second it.
Well, it's a recommendation, really. I think.
Yeah, I'm more than happy.
We'll add a 2.4 that says that southern rural, as spoken by Simon in his report about the potential introduction of small for small developments, that we'd be very supportive to Cabinet if they are doing that. Anybody else who's not spoken who'd like to speak on this?
Yeah, I think we need a seconder. I'm happy to second.
Okay, to add that recommendation. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor North. So we haven't heard from Councillor Davies or Councillor Deacon Davies. So are we going to hear from you, or are you just going to go to the recommendations that we've got? Oh, Councillor Davies, I've prompted you to put your hand up.
Yeah, I had nothing specific to add, so I wasn't going to, but yes, I also completely support this recommendation. The idea of SIL, I think that planning applications coming in for 9 houses is effectively developers gaming the system to just avoid 106. And I think it's a loophole we should close.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not going to read the recommendations that we have on our paper tonight. We've got recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and we've added 2.4. Can I ask if we're ready, William, to take the vote on those, please?
Yes, please, if members would like to vote in the usual manner.
Sorry, just to think a good point of order is if we're taking a vote, who motioned it and who seconded it?
I've moved all of them, and whilst the additional recommendation I've moved and Councillor North seconded.
Councillor North seconded 2.4, did he, or all of it?
I seconded the amendment that was added by Councillor Moody, but happy to second the substantive as well.
Okay, no, it's all seconded. Okay, thank you.
So we're voting on all. Are we complete now, Matthew?
Yes, we are, and both motions are carried.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Simon, for coming along to Southern Rural, and we will look forward to you coming along next year.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Okay, moving on, that brings us to item 9 on my agenda, which is any ward matters and outside organisations that members would like to report to the committee. Anything they'd like to draw our attention to? And I have Councillor Sam North.
Yeah, as I've spoken on everything, I thought I'd speak on this as well. I just wanted to say a really big thank you to Hitchin Lavender and Morrison's in Letchworth and various residents in Ickleford who supported a free school meal relief scheme over this half term to support the vulnerable families in Ickleford and Holwell to sort of maintain their hunger during sort of half term, and also to Sally O'Zaden, who has been running Ickleford Community Larder for the past year, again supporting vulnerable families through difficult times, including COVID as well. So a huge thank you to them on my behalf.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Terry Tyler.
Yes, Sam, just to remind me about the school meals. I'd like to thank Stevenage Borough Council because for Great Ashby, they're allowing children to go along to the St Nicholas Centre to have school meals there. Because Great Ashby is split between Stevenage Borough Council and North Herts, but they've very kindly stepped in and said that all the children from Great Ashby, no matter which part they're in, will be eligible to go along if they're in need of school meals, which I think is really good, and really good that we're working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to raise under ward matters? Councillor Moody.
Just a very quick one while Claire's on, and I know Councillor Tyler and Councillor North have mentioned about food banks. I think like every village, we've got food banks and support networks going. While Claire's on, is there any extra help that we could possibly offer them from North Herts District Council, or any organisations we can push them towards?
Sorry, just trying to start my video. The host stopped my video, so I need the host to start my video. Oh, hang on, right.
Coming. Why don't you just come on and get you? Oh, you're back. You're back.
No. Yes, we have. Firstly, we've got a coronavirus community support fund. So if they need any funding, they can apply for that. And we also have a food provision network. So I think we've got most of the organisations linked into that. We have regular Zoom meetings with all the providers across the district so that they can share ideas, best practice. We can get out the latest information to them about what's going on. There's also some money coming from DEFRA for food banks. It's £10,000 for the district, which doesn't actually work out very much. I think on our list of food providers in our network, there's about 23 at the moment, and there's probably others that might not be on there. So if you split that between all of those food providers, it works out about £500 per organisation. And given that usually we're looking at providing supermarket vouchers to those organisations to give out to families in need. So for a family of 4, they might get a £100 voucher. So that's 5 vouchers. So that's what we're doing at the moment. And then we're just passing on any information because, as you're aware, there are lots of organisations, businesses, etc., who are doing loads in the community. So we're kind of filing all that information and distributing it everywhere to the food provision network, to our contacts on our Facebook pages via the North Herts Health Hub as well. So if you do have any new organisations setting up, then do send them in our direction. They can contact me directly or to the community inbox.
I was going to say that I know you sent out through the members' information the list of all some of the community networks are on. Actually, Offaly has now got a sort of a pantry open on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I just saw that was on the list. Do you also want to say something about the food provisioning? Because again, I don't know if members know, and again, I know about it because I'm involved with it through the Rotary Club I belong to. They always have done Christmas food for needy families, which usually has been involved in taking a Christmas hamper around to the most vulnerable so that they've got everything they need for Christmas. Unfortunately, of course, this year with COVID, they can't do it in the way that they've normally done it, which is normally involved. I think it's usually a Priory School where they set themselves up and they just they have everything there to make the food parcels up, and then they get distributed around for the families. But I believe it's still going to go ahead, but this time it will be done with vouchers and that.
Yes, exactly. And I did have a meeting with Ian Albert and Judy Billing yesterday, and they were concerned about the Christmas provision, and they're going to look into seeing if there's any extra funding available within budgets to do something specifically over Christmas. I don't know what that will be yet. That's just, you know, conversations at the moment. But we are with our networks, we are ensuring that they're all talking to each other so that there's no kind of crossover in provision, and the help that's out there is spread evenly and that it goes across the whole district.
And because there's another group that are organising Christmas presents for children as well.
Yeah, the Salvation Army always do Christmas presents for children, and I'm sure there'll be a few others as well that are doing that. And that's often sort of linked, it's often a similar or the same organisations, but another branch of them that do the food provision will be doing presents.
Okay. Anybody else got any further questions for Claire?
No, just on behalf of us, a big thank you for the work that she does and the coordination that she does, putting everything together.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have to say it's amazing, and certainly the groups that are out there and what they're contributing to the district is absolutely fabulous, and not just in Southern Rural, across the whole of the district. Okay, let's go back to my agenda. The next meeting that we have is actually on the 10th of December, which doesn't sound too far away, but that's obviously because we had to move this meeting. Claire, can you just remind everybody what the closing dates are for grant applications to there's that meeting and the one on the 4th of March? Because I know we do sometimes have a few parish councils and that, or organisations that sort of run it to the wire or miss the deadlines. So if it might be helpful if we could just remind us all what the deadlines are, so that if we are talking to anybody, we can prompt them into action.
Bear with me, I need to look at the website to remind myself. I do know that the deadline for the December meeting is already gone, because that was Monday.
Right.
Although I have just had emails, just prior to this meeting, I was having discussions with Ickleford Parish Council about a gardening project they want to apply for funding for. I have said, get me information by Monday morning and I can include you. So I think I've got every faith that Ray Blake at Ickleford will be able to do that. And we've got quite a few in for next month, actually about 5. So that will be a bit of a longer meeting. And the bear with me and I'll get into the website.
And the meeting after that is on the 4th of March.
Right, the pre-application deadline. So if people want to put in sort of their ideas of what they want to apply for and have a discussion about it, is the 25th of January. And the final deadline is the 15th of February for the March meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Then in that case, if there's no more raised hands, nobody else wants to do anything, I will call the meeting to a close. Thank you all for coming, and thank you also, Mark, for doing the network for us. You may close the meeting. Thank you and good night.